Back on Beat the Closing Number. I'm Eli Hershkovich. You can follow me on X at Eli Hershkovich, joined by Jason Lisk of Team Rankings and PoolGenius, a partnership with thelines.com, talking survivor pool strategy for the NFL season throughout to help you get ready for your survivor pool, whether it's in the Circa Survivor or any other pool, just with your buddies. Jason, how we doing, man?
We are doing good. It's getting to NFL Week 1 crunch time. As we record this, cuts are coming in, and so we should be finding out who's actually going to be playing in Week 1 here in the next few days.
When it comes to what teams we may be playing, our viewers and listeners may be playing for NFL Week 1 Survivor, we'll dive into some Week 1 thoughts here in a bit. But for you, just on the onset, what are a couple keys that should go into the listener viewer strategy when it comes to their respective survivor pool, whether they're novice or experienced players?
I mean, the main thing you need to remember about a survivor pool, because a lot of people get into them. It seems simple. I pick one team, I go through. I'm worried about this week, but your goal is to win the contest. And it doesn't much matter if you lose in Week 1 or Week 5 or Week 8 because you've run out of options and you're taking bad picks. You have to have a plan to win the specific pool you're entering. If you're in a really large pool, you have to know that you're going to be making 15, 16, 17, maybe 18 picks, which means you're going to get down to teams you're not comfortable with. And the question you got to ask yourself is, when do I want to make those uncomfortable picks? When does it make game theory sense? So you got to think about how you want to play the pool. And so that's like the main thing. The difference between, I'd say, most people and people that have an edge is they understand the game they're playing, which is I'm trying to ultimately win against everybody. And so I need to take contrarian stands. I need to take teams when they're relatively less popular options. I need to take my risky picks when other people aren't on them. And I need to take my better picks, hopefully when less people are on them and I can get better leverage on the field. So those are things that people need to think about, is how I'm playing the crowd, how I'm playing my opponents, because you only win if your opponents lose.
Right. And we'll get into all the tools over at PoolGenius. Remember, you could sign up in the link below in this video. Check it out in the description. Get a free trial for PoolGenius with thelines.com through Week 1. So you get that for the next, 2-3 weeks. It's an incredible offer. Check it out in the description. But you mentioned it's not just about winning Week 1 or getting to Week 3, Week 4. It's about winning the contest. And the saying, getting to Thanksgiving, getting to the holiday season when you're doing a survivor pool is no joke. I did a story over at thelines.com. You can check it out. Talked with Derek Stevens, owner and CEO of Circa Sports, and obviously the mainstay, one of the big people when it comes to talking about Circa Survivor. And $10 million on the line. So you're really trying to strategize how to get to Thanksgiving, whether it's the Thanksgiving slate on actual Thanksgiving or Black Friday. And then obviously you're talking about Christmas and the one game the day after with the Seahawks and the Bears. And the Chiefs, Stevens made the argument, you guys kind of did too when it came to the most valuable team from a future standpoint in survivor pools. The Chiefs may be the most valuable because playing on Thanksgiving, or playing that week, I should say, and then playing on Christmas as well. Would you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, I wrote an article on our site about Circa future value teams for 2024. The Chiefs I think, are definitely the most valuable. And so they're the team you need to think about. They're one of the key teams. They are the most valuable. I would put San Francisco, Baltimore. I would put Cincinnati in that. And then there's teams that come up on the Thanksgiving and slate that also get in the discussion. But Kansas City is probably the most valuable overall because, A, yes, they're on both holiday slates. But B, you're just like, there's going to be so many other opportunities to think about using them that those decisions will ultimately probably decide who wins. Like, do you pick them on the wrong week where you just catch them on one of their bad weeks? Do you pick them on a week where everybody else gets upset and so you actually dominate? That's what you're going for. Or do you pick them on a week where everybody wins and so you kind of wasted them? Those things will ultimately decide it, but there will be so many opportunities for Kansas City. And they're the team, they're the queen on the chessboard this year, if I were to put that analogy for the survivor pool in Circa.
And looking at another team that has some futures value when it comes to survivor pools and futures betting in general, to me at least. I have a bet on the Bengals to win the AFC North at plus 165. So I like them from a future standpoint. Therefore, they have futures value to me when I'm playing in Survivor and looking at where you guys have the Bengals listed at when it comes to projections throughout the season. Number of weeks as projected, the top favorite 3 times. Number of weeks projected for 75% plus win probability. So win probability on the money line 5 times. Number of weeks in the top 5 of projected win probability and a 65% plus win probability in general this season 7 times. And you look at week 1, 9.5 point favorites against the Patriots at home. Also about projected to be a 7.5 point favorite against the Commanders. Jaden Daniels. We'll see, assuming Jamar Chase is on the field for the Bengals and he ends this holdout after CeeDee Lamb got his contract from the Cowboys yesterday. Projected week 1 popularity, according to your guys' tools over at PoolGenius, 34% for the Bengals in week 1. So Cincinnati, a team you're looking to stay away from and save, kind of like the Chiefs?
It depends on the contest. I think they are a better pick in certain types of contests, and those are probably generally your smaller, your home league, your things that are going to be like 50 entries, 60, like a contest that isn't going to go the distance. I think Cincinnati makes more sense. They are a solidly, like in a vacuum, they're the best pick in week 1, even at 34% ownership, because there's nobody else over 70% to win. So if you think about it, that means 66% of the pool is on risky picks. So while not all of them are going to lose, there's going to be a chunk of them that do lose, and you're most likely to advance. But the problem when you get into large pools or in Circa, right, like a really big contest where you're probably you have to run the nut. I think Circa's gone the distance every year. So maybe you get lucky and it doesn't go 18, but it probably, and 20 picks with the holidays, but it probably will with 10,000 plus entries. In that kind of contest, yeah, okay, maybe you're the most likely to advance out of week 1. Maybe you are in the best, maybe like you are more likely to lock up that advancement. But then you're going up against advancers who didn't use them. And some use teams that they probably will never consider using again. And you are a slight underdog to almost the entire field for the rest of the tournament in that sense. And so that's like what you have to think about is using Cincinnati takes away, it limits your options, especially in a contest where you're going to want to save Kansas City and you may want to save Baltimore. And then what are you like? Then you're going to have to make risky picks somewhere, decide where to pick. I would tend to make them on teams that I think aren't going to be like overly popular, like once you get to 10% on a team that's like a 4-point favorite, 5-point, and we will see that in Circa later in the year. That's the kind of pick I want to avoid. I don't want to be on a pick with everybody else, so I'm more willing to take that chance in week 1. And you got to go with the mentality. I'm probably not winning. I'm like, what is it? Out of 10,000 entries, you're like you're like 10, maybe you're 1 in 1,000, right? And if you have an edge, maybe you're 3 in 1,000, 4 in 1,000. You're still like under 1%. So you have to go with that mentality, I think, and take chances, take them early. The only thing getting eliminated now versus getting eliminated at Thanksgiving or before does is it saves you a lot of time from sending in those picks to your, proxy and dealing with a lot of nervousness later in the year. But you should think about what kind of entry do I want to show up to Thanksgiving? Who do I want to have left if I want to play it out? If I am fortunate enough to get there, who do I want? That's how you should be thinking.
I want to go back in time a little bit. A few years ago, you mentioned not having to send your picks in anymore to proxies. Maybe people will just want to lose at that point. Yeah. I don't think there is the option like there is in Circa Millions where if you have the worst entry, then you get a prize. I don't think it's anything like that in Circa Survivor. But you made it pretty deep in your Survivor pool going back to 2021. Dolphins, Ravens, rainy Thursday night in Miami. You want to take us back to your faithful
I believe in Circa that
story?
Was it was either the week right before the Thanksgiving picks or maybe 2. It was right at it. And was set up for the next couple weeks. And Baltimore played on Thursday night against Miami. Miami was not good that year. And that was, I swear, Baltimore is like one of my curses just personally. Like Like I had them last year when they lost to the Colts in overtime and missed the fourth down. I had them on several entries when they had all that nonsense in overtime with the non-called PIs. Well, anyway, that game, Lamar Jackson was terrible. They couldn't move the ball. They fell behind. It was on prime time, so you had to watch the entire game. And so that's just a painful way to go out before the rest of the slate plays on a Thursday night.
Yeah, looking back, 43 pass attempts for Lamar, 5.5 yards per attempt. I mean, not much more you could say. Devontae Freeman was the running back for the Ravens, so a little bit of a throwback there as well. But getting back to your guys' tools over at PoolGenius, one of the most valuable ones to me is the Survivor Pool Optimal Path Output, where you could design a week-to-week Survivor strategy and get the actual input from the Max Expected Value plus EV calculator tool. And going back to the Bengals for a second, most of the entries that I filled out just on a whim last night, just playing around with the Max EV calculator tool under the optimal path output entry, came up with the Bengals using Cincinnati in week 17 against the Broncos. Now, we'll get to Denver here in a bit as it relates to Seattle taking on the Broncos in week 1, a rookie in Bo Nix and a rookie head coach for the Seahawks in Mike McDonald. But would you also be willing to wait that long to use Cincinnati? Because I know a lot of your articles over at PoolGenius say you don't necessarily want to lose value on a team like that by waiting it out so long.
Yeah, I mean, that optimal path tool is designed for the entire season. Like, it assumes all games that you need to go 18. So obviously, if you need to go 18, that would be, I think they're the biggest favorite in week 17. They're also the biggest favorite in a bunch of other weeks. The reason they pop there is because if they've been used by everybody and you show up to week 17 as the biggest favorite, you are in a massive, strong position late in the season. But if you're asking me personally, here's what I would say about the Bengals. The Bengals are kind of like a unique team, right? In that most of their great matchups, I think, are in the first half of the season. Their first month is like their easiest stretch. That week 17 game is kind of like the only one late in the year. So you could choose to defer week 1 without making that choice eventually, because you could be like, I don't want to use them yet, but maybe they're useful in week 9 instead of 17, right? Maybe by the time we get to 9, maybe you're like, I want to use them week 9. That's reasonable. So yeah, if you had one individual and it's going the whole season, it's kicking out Cincinnati week 17. But I bet if you played around and put a different team in 17, it's kicking them to like 9 or 5, maybe 3 or 4. I forget which one. There's one that they're definitely. Let me see. Oh yeah, New England in week 4, or no, that's it. The Carolina in week 4. They're an option. They are an option against Washington in week 3. So both those are also in play. And then week 9, they get the Raiders at home. And so, to me, there's not really like a definite answer on the Bengals. It's more like I'd like to have them somewhere, and we'll see how the season plays out. It's probably going to be a case where if you don't use them by week 9, though, you're saving them. But it's probably the case that 90-something% of the pool has used them. But that's optimal only in, say, 1,000 entry pool. Like what size pool is going week 18? Probably 1,000 entry or more.
Before we get into other week 1 options, if you're looking to save the Bengals, what other tools should the Lions listeners and viewers be looking out for over at PoolGenius?
Yeah, we've got lots of tools. I mean, we provide our customized picks, which do try to take in your pool size, your existing pool size. So like right now, it'd be however many people enter. But if we had a big wipeout, it's going to adjust like kind of some estimates on how long your pool should last based on who's left, how many people are left. Because some years a lot of people survive through week 7. Others, there's big wipeouts. And so we kind of change our priors on what we think a pool should last. So we have those, you set up individual pools, you get customized picks, you get portfolio picks spread across those. Tools that I love to use, you talked about the optimal path. I like the season planner. That's like the optimal path, but you get to set it. You get to kind of sort by week, click teams in, kind of play around with it. You can remove teams from a week, put them back in, kind of play with the scenarios just to kind of see what's out there. I think it's good education on like which weeks look like they're going to be harder in the future that I might want to like for example, week 9. I talked about that. Week 9 right now. We project Baltimore versus Denver, Cincinnati versus the Raiders, and the Chiefs versus Tampa at home, all at home. as easily the three biggest favorites that week. Other than that, we don't have a team above 65% to win. And that's consistent with the look-ahead lines. You go look at look-ahead lines in any sports book for week 9. There's no other team besides those three at above 3.5 points. Now, things could change, but that to me looks like a kind of week that is like one that I want to have in my head. Like, until I see numbers start to change, I'm like, man, I really want to have one of those three teams available for that week. So that's from looking at the season planner tool. I'm just, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I do not want to burn all three of these teams and show up and have to pick the Titans versus the Patriots game. When 15% of the pool is going to be on one of those teams or whatever, whoever the favorite is, because they can use them. Because those are the trap games I want to avoid in Survivor, where people get bunched up on a team they think they have to pick.
Looking at going back to week 1, Seahawks and Broncos, we've mentioned Denver a few times. Rookie Bo Nix having a standout preseason, as low as I think 5-1, 6-1 over at Caesar Sportsbook to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. You can price shop for the best odds over at thelines.com. And actually, speaking of great promotions and other tools that are going on and just fun prizes in general, games over at thelines.com, we're having a Survivor Pool contest with a $5,000 prize pool. You'll be able to sign up for that in the coming days, or depending on when you're listening, watching this, you may be able to sign up right now. So check that out over at thelines.com. But Denver at Seattle in week 1. Seahawks are actually up to a 6-point favorite over at Circa. 71.4% implied probability to win the game outright, according to the money line price, which is right around minus 250 over at Circa as well. Seattle expected to be, according to PoolGenius, the 4th most selected pick for week 1. And defensively, even though you add Mike McDonald, one of the standout defensive coordinators, now head coach for Seattle, Nwosu, their best edge rusher, is going to be out 2 to 6 weeks with an MCL sprain. Yes, they added Gibson from Jacksonville, former Bears defensive end, but still pretty big loss, and a significant one, going up against a mobile quarterback in Nix. Granted, a rookie, but Seattle obviously having a rookie head coach as well. So Seahawks, a play for you as a Survivor pick in week 1, or you trying to stay away from the rookie head coach against a rookie quarterback, where the potential outcomes on both sides are pretty widespread?
Yeah. So here's what I'd say on that. I forget. I'm going to butcher the quote. There's a quote like, "Oh, it's the worst system except for all the others." Right? Week 1 this year is super risky. I've done some research that we'll publish on our site at some point this week on week 1 and Survivor options. I looked at every team for last 15 years that was favored by 3 or more in week 1. I looked at what their quarterback situation was. It a new quarterback? Was it a rookie? Was it a new veteran they signed? Was it the same quarterback back? Was it a guy coming back from injury like Burrow? I looked at coaches. Was it the same coaches the year before for each, the favorite, the dog, both sides? Just to see like that stuff. This is intuitive. It's a small sample size. We're less than 200 games, but it's still intuitive that the most predictable games, the games that were closest, like the spread performance of the favorites was about 50%, and the variance was the lowest, were games with the same coach back for both teams, and games where the quarterbacks were back for both teams and had played most of the previous year, which makes sense. If in Survivor we kind of want to avoid uncertainty in some ways, right? Like it's an uncertain game, but like if I'm taking favorites, I would rather there be less like, man, I'm walking into a trap and I didn't know. And so the problem though this year is there's not really any of those games. There really aren't. I mean, you've got Burrow coming back from injury. You got the Patriots maybe either with a new coach who isn't Bill Belichick. And so the market's down on them big time. And they either have a rookie starting, because we don't know if Drake May's starting yet, or it's going to be a journeyman Brissett out of nowhere. And so that line's being impacted, but that's a high variance game. You've got this game, new head coach for Seattle in a favorites role, rookie quarterback on the Denver side, wide range of outcomes. Like, go look at we are not very good at predicting which rookies. Like, people didn't think Herbert was any good. They sat Tyrod. They played Tyrod Taylor for 1 week, and it took like a freak injury, and then we find out the dude can throw for over 4,000 yards. We don't know. Bo Nix could throw for 4,000 and and vastly outperform expectations. They're very down in the market, but he could do that, or he could be terrible. All those things are in the range of outcomes as we go into this game. Like, he could light them up different way, but remember RG3 going against the Saints? Saints were one of the most this was like 2012. The Saints were like the most popular. They were the biggest favorite that week. And we didn't know what RG3 was as a rookie, as a runner, and the kind of offense Washington was going to use. And they lit up the Saints for 40 points. So, I mean, what are we walking into? So that's my concern with that Seattle-Denver game. I would almost play alt lines either way, whatever you're strong about, because I feel like that game's going to be like, it's going to vastly outperform your expectation either way. It could be an upset, or it could be Seattle rolling because Denver's just not very good. So that's my concern there. But then I'm like, what's the other option? I think Seattle's your best game theory play from, like, they don't have a bunch of great matchups in the future. They're playing one of the teams looks like the easiest on their schedule. Because, I mean, you're not going to want to play them against the other teams in their division, I don't think. You're not going to want to play them against even in Arizona, I think, is a live dog that I probably am not playing them against. And then, what are your other options? Because then you're getting down to like 3.5-point favorites like Detroit versus the Rams. And I don't want to use Detroit. They have more future value, things like that. And so, where are you going? So Seattle is definitely in play. It's an uncomfortable play, I think. But everything in week 1 is going to be uncomfortable.
I'm going to give you another uncomfortable play, or a couple more, and then I want to get some of your uncomfortable plays here. Let's get uncomfortable on Beat the Closing Number, Jason. Caleb Williams' first NFL start, similar to Bo Nix. Market has been come a bit on Tennessee over the last couple weeks here. Bears down from -4.5 to -4 at some shops, now back up to 4.5. And the Bears, according to PoolGenius, projected to be the 6th most popular play, right around 4%. Williams up against a pretty good cornerback duo if Awuzie is healthy for the Titans. Obviously acquiring standout corner L'Jarius Sneed from the defending champion Chiefs. But then on the flip side, Levis, second-year quarterback, led the NFL with a 10.5 ADOT last season. His first regular season game, I know he played well last week in the preseason against the Saints, but first regular season game with Brian Callahan in his system, which is pretty much all about easy access, short passes, and he's up against a stout Bears defense. Keep in mind, from week 9 to 18 last season, after the Bears added Montez Sweat, Chicago ranked 6th in EPA per drive allowed and 9th in success rate allowed. And they added Kevin Byard, former Titans and Eagles safety. So if you can't tell, I'm actually pretty bullish still on this Bears defense, even though they had a decent amount of positive injury luck last season. Williams, not the most favorable matchup against that Titans secondary, but I think the Bears may be a sneaky play. What say you?
I love the Bears long-term this year. I mean, I know the market steamed them up. They're expected to win over half their games. I think by our projections and by the market, they're either the final wild card or they're right at the cut line for like making the playoffs. And I do think there's reason for that optimism. I think Caleb can cook with these receivers as they work into the season. This one, again, concerns me because of all that we talked about, variance factors, because there's been lots of historical examples of good quarterbacks who were making their first start as rookies, as favorites, and their team lost. And even if they had a good year after that. And so that kind of concerns me is, some good quarterbacks didn't play well in week 1 or lost close games in week 1. And my thought on Chicago is I think Chicago is more valuable than Seattle. Like, I have more confidence Chicago is going to be good by the second half of the year. I think you've got cases where they play Carolina, New England, Minnesota through the middle of the season. And in Circa, they are on that Christmas slate with Seattle. And if you're lucky enough to get there, you might want them. You might be down to like one of 4 or 5 entries left if you're looking at it. And you're not really caring about whoever everybody else's pick is like, do I have a pick? And the Bears may be it because you may have decided to use the Chiefs. You don't want to use the Ravens versus, I think it's Houston. It feels like a matchup you probably don't want to save either of those teams for. And so in Circa, I'm probably not using Chicago because I'm like, I think they'll be good and there may be better options for them later in the year where I'm more confident of how Caleb's now got the offense. He's not going through game 1 jitters, all that stuff. is kind of my thought on the Bears. Is it's a risky spot for them too as a favorite in a rookie's first start.
I will say though, just for comparison's sake, to play devil's advocate, if you go back to, might have been the last favorite rookie quarterback being favored in week 1, going back to Trevor Lawrence a few years ago at Houston. They were favored by, I think, 3.5, and
they were
up against Tyrod Taylor, and Texans smoked them. So, yes, Lawrence, hyped up rookie. I think that was Doug Peterson's first year, or maybe
no,
Doug
that
Peterson
that was the Urban Meyer disaster experience.
Oh, right.
That was right. His rookie year, so that people were, because I think Houston was starting somebody bad at quarter. Like Houston was expected to be bad, so people were like, well, the Jags aren't expected to be good, but it's Urban Meyer, game 1. He's a guy that's coached a lot of games. He'll know what he's doing. It did not work out that way. That's an example.
But that was on the road.
Yeah,
just to play devil's advocate with Williams at home against the Titans.
Yeah, for sure. Again, I think Chicago's probably Chicago's the better team to me, but I'm more confident they will be the better team in week 5 or week 4. I feel like they're going to figure out, that usage with the receivers. How much is Adunze going to play in week? I'm worried they were using so much heavy tight end packages. Are they really going to maximize what they have in their 3 wide receivers early in the season, or are they going to have to kind of learn that over the season? I think when that team gets going, they'll cook.
Looking at some other week 1 options, Jason, what stands out to you on the board?
Yeah, so again, it's a risky week. I like the Bengals reluctantly, because I do think historically teams with quarterbacks coming back from injury have been slightly undervalued, I think, early in the year. Like we saw that with Dallas last year. We saw that with Baltimore, where the quarterback had been out. And so to the extent like the lines are being set by some models that have games where those guys were missing, I think there's some value there. And so I do like the Bengals. It's just that using them in Survivor is a question. But I like the Bengals even though they're the largest number on the board. I like Arizona. I personally would be afraid of Buffalo. And that's another injury situation. We saw what Arizona did at the end of last year with Kyler coming back. Massive difference. That team was pretty bad on offense, and definitely terrible that Cleveland game when they didn't even they were like, we're not bringing Kyler back for this game. We're just sacrificing. I forget who they started, but it was bad. But once he came back, they were pretty good on offense, and they didn't have Marvin Harrison, and Michael Wilson had a shoulder. Michael Wilson was injured most of the time Murray's back. Trey McBride broke out with Murray over the second half of the season, but now they've got Harrison and a healthy Wilson, and I think an upgraded slot receiver. I think that offense and Buffalo's transition to a new receiving core are kind of factors where I would take the points with Arizona, and I'd be worried about Buffalo as a survivor pick.
Yeah, that line has dipped from Bills -7 all the way down at some shops to Buffalo -5.5. I want to throw out one more team, and it's an interesting game theory conversation in its own right, because divisional game, we saw it last year, Texans at Jags. Jags were hyped up after winning the division. I think a touchdown, 7.5-point favorite at home in week 3. That knocked out a decent amount of the field, no matter what survivor pool you were playing in. When Houston went to Jacksonville, won the game outright because many contestants were on the Jags. So another divisional game that has my eye, Saints at home against the Panthers. Now, granted, I'm actually a little bit higher on the Saints than the market. I have a bet on the Saints to win the division just because of range of outcomes. Offensive coordinator shift, going from Carmichael to Kubiak, former pass game coordinator with the 49ers. I actually think it's a pretty high ceiling offense, depending on how the offensive line plays, which is definitely where the low floor comes into play, especially if Penning is at right tackle. But any thought to playing the Saints if you don't want to use them the rest of the way, if you're not as bullish maybe as I am on New Orleans?
Yeah, Our internal models are down on the Saints, but I think that's probably because of some modeling on what team, their age. I think they've got there's some factors that we have on that. Their defense is getting up there. I think they have 5 key starters that are over 31 that could manifest itself over the course of the season. And also just Dennis Allen, year 3, but we haven't seen a breakout, and he's been in the league a while. So, and there's some uncertainty with Carolina. But I do think Carolina was so bad last year, and they aren't going to have, Jonathan Brooks. They're not going to have that playmaker until midseason probably now, as it looks, as he went on PUP. They have Deontay Johnson. The offense should be better. Bryce Young can't be worse. My gosh. I mean, those numbers were terrible. I mean, you have to assume a pretty big, bounce back for Carolina with the new coach, Canales, to get to this number, I think. So I don't hate it as a survivor option. I'm ambivalent on the Saints long term. I mean, I'm not a Dennis Allen fan. They have to play better offense. I mean, I feel like they misused Olave. Rashid Shaheed is a big breakout candidate. Kamara is getting up there, and there's not much behind him. And so I have concerns there. But yeah, I do think they could have upgraded their left tackle position. We'll see. How that goes. And so yeah, that's an interesting one, because I think the Saints are kind of in that Seattle boat as far as game theory. You probably what's their schedule like? Yeah, maybe but they're getting Carolina right away. I mean, how many other matchups are they going to get like this over the course of the year where you're going to be yeah, I can get them? And what are they? Less than 10% pick.
About a 4-point favorite.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm ambivalent because, again, I wouldn't tease this. For those out there, I would not tease this line because I think there's a range of outcomes here. Carolina just isn't any better, only marginally better. And then you're going to want to have played a line that was under a touchdown against them to start the year. Or, Canales makes a big difference, because we have seen, I don't anticipate it, but we have seen first overall picks, high draft picks who were terrible in year 1, like Jared Goff, break out with the new coach. Is Canales McVay? Does this team have the rest of the offense around him? I don't think so, but, we've seen it, where you can't completely write them off. So that's kind of my thoughts there. Is, again, yet another, as I said, high variance situation in week 1 where there's a lot of uncertainty. New coaches, new quarterbacks, second-year quarterbacks and new systems, all that stuff. Wide range of outcomes on this one.
Yeah, divisional game could lead to a lot of variance. Panthers going to be without DJ Wanham, one of their better pass rushers, obviously trading Burns in the offseason. So big loss, and that could help the Saints' offensive line, even though they're pretty weak up front besides Fuaga at left tackle and McCoy, Fuaga being their first-round pick. But yeah, I get your overall negativity towards New Orleans. To me, it was between, especially in a division that has a wide range of outcomes, I was looking at Saints or Panthers, and I'm still relatively high on that defense, despite the fact they are getting up there in age, whether it's Cam Jordan or Tyrann Mathieu. And I know Dennis Allen gets a ton of negative commentary when it comes to him being a minus EV head coach, but still a pretty good, borderline great defensive coordinator. So we'll see. We'll see if I end up cashing or burning.
I'll tell you, I'm down on Atlanta, relative to the market. The market is assuming a huge leap, I think. And you're relying on how old's Cousin? 34, coming off Achilles injury. You are, we assume it was Arthur Smith, but I mean, that team significantly underperformed last year against what was I know they have a supposedly easy schedule. They had an easy schedule last year, and they were not good. So the market is assuming a big leap by Atlanta, and we have seen a lot of these. I mean, unless you've been a Hall of Famer, like Peyton Manning going to Denver, or Tom Brady to the Bucs, or if you consider Stafford that good, going to the Rams and win the Super Bowl. But we've seen way more that people might forget of these kind of quarterbacks moving into their mid-30s, signing with new teams, and underperforming and disappointing. Russell Wilson being one of the most recent examples. But guys more in Kirk Cousins' class as far as what their careers look like, moving to a new team, especially coming off injury. I think there's a lot of systemic risk with Atlanta, the market being as high on Atlanta. So I do think there's value in kind of fading a different South team at long odds to emerge if Atlanta's just not as good as people thought. They could be better and still not match the market expectation.
Right. No, I loved your point. I wrote that up actually in my Division Bets article when it came to New Orleans or Carolina for that matter, and having a wide range of outcomes in that division just because we've seen veteran quarterbacks not being able to click right away. We also haven't seen Cousins move at all coming off of a major injury. Matthew Judon, even though he finally gives Atlanta a decent, borderline good, great pass rusher if he's healthy, but he's coming off a pretty significant knee injury or rib injury too. And then Justin Simmons, we don't know where he's at when it comes to his age. So, yeah, I'm not as high on the Falcons as the market is. I may be betting Pittsburgh +3. Plug your nose play. A little bit of a tease there when it comes to our week one bets over at the lines.com.
Tomlin likes getting points, so I don't think that's a terrible play. I mean, giving him points, it's not like they've had better quarterback play than they're going to get this year recently. They certainly haven't. It's all relative. So,
right. Yeah. Getting back to PoolGenius, our partnership with Team Rankings and PoolGenius, you could use the data grid, compare win probability to money line win probability within the betting market. The probability column also allows you to deviate from the public pick of the week, as we discussed potentially with the Bengals in week one, although Jason made a good case for maybe taking Cincinnati against the Patriots just because of all these other high variance outcomes, whether it's the Seahawks or Bears or maybe even the Saints. And also you want to take a look at the futures value section to get a look at where the most valuable commodities will be later in the season, whether it be the Chiefs or even the 49ers. We'll see what happens with some of their holdouts as we get closer to kickoff Monday night, 49ers Jets here in about a week and a half. But Jason, what else should our listeners and viewers know about PoolGenius?
Yeah, I mean, we got survivor pools. You can set up. I mean, we obviously have a wide range of what you can do to take advantage. If you are a subscriber, you can set up pools and get up to 30 picks a week. And I say that, I mean, some people may think that's crazy, but lots of us play like lots of pools. And in 2024, compared to 2014, when you generally had to know somebody and you had to be in the pool with a buddy, I mean, there's a lot more options online. There are sites that host things, and they'll launch contests in week 2, week 3, week 4 for Survivor, not just week 1. Now you can jump in all year. So, like, if you love the Survivor concept and want to play it as a power user who wants to attack it strategically with multiple entries, you can use our product to do that by, you get up to 30 active entries. So as entries get eliminated, you could add more and still get them throughout the year. I played what they call second chance pools all year last year and entered contests at various points. It gives you different texture to your season, all sorts of fun stuff. So that's one thing is there. We have football pick'em. You can set up pools unlimited there. Spread, game winner, confidence point. You tell us all your rules details, college games included. You can set up pools to get college, and you'll see the data grid for college games too if you're in such a pool. So all that's there. We just closed our first year of one and done golf. That was a fun experience. We launched a golf product this year that helped you identify, recent tournament success, course history, all that stuff. In one simple place. I know a lot of people love to study golf, so that was fun. And so we have all this stuff. You can do the individual sports, or you could do like a full package where you get lots of pools from this through March Madness, which we talked about last March, and all that stuff. So all that's there, lots of tools. You'll get to hear me writing. I write to our subscribers each week within our articles that are often behind a paywall. I'll be explaining, like, week 5, here's why we're on this team, or here's what we're seeing, or here's the injury we're watching that could impact where our picks go later in the week. I just am in the weeds updating on like the strategy, and I answer strategy questions for subscribers. So all that's available for those of you that love to play in pools.
Check it out over at PoolGenius. You could get that free trial for week 1 in the description below. Be sure to click the link in the description below this video. You can follow Jason on X at Jason Lisk. You can sign up for our own Survivor Pool with $5,000 in prizes that coming out here in the coming days, or if you're watching this on Thursday, Friday, later in the week, even next week, ahead of week 1, you could sign up over at play.thelines.com. Also, check out all of our staff bets in the Lines Discord channel. The link is over at thelines.com. So, for Jason and for myself, Eli Hershkovich, thanks for watching and listening to another edition of Beat the Closing Number. So luck, everybody, and good luck with your Week 1 Survivor picks.